Hi, I'm Jim Sowers. This video is about creating several different possible patterns from a rough forge knife on paper and then transferring the best of those patterns back onto the rough forge blade for grinding. Thanks for watching. This is the knife that I rough forged in the last video. If I don't have a final design figured out when I have the knife rough forged, I'll come and make paper templates. I'll try 2 or 3 different patterns and then choose the one that I like the best. Here you can see I'm just going to trace the exact rough forging as it is several times and in the same place so I can compare designs side by side. I'm starting with the spine, and on the first 2 knives I'm just going to go with a pretty straight spine, but maybe something different on the top. These drawing tools are called French curves, and I use them sometimes. They're a little small though, and I found some longer arcs. This is called a ship's curve, and you can get a set of them. And I really like the arcs on them, and the different radiuses that you can choose from. So here I'll do kind of a dropped handle on the upper knife pattern. Next, I'll start thinking about the point. The upper knife is going to be a slight drop point, the center one kind of a spear, and I think with the third possible pattern, I think I'll go with a Wharncliffe style, kind of a desk knife. Next, I choose the spot on the forging where it's right to begin the cutting edge of the blade. That's called the choil. It's a good time to talk about knife design. Let's identify here a couple of the different parts of the knives. I'm just using an old template from the template drawer just for this example. So that's the choil. That's where the cutting edge will end. There's the front of the handle. Between the choil and the handle is maybe the most important part. That's the ricasso. It's like home base. It's the place that all the rest of the knife should be based off of, and it should be pretty flat and square. And here's the point, and I draw that because in this we'll talk a little bit about how a knife looks and works a little differently depending on where the point is in relation to the center line. So the upper drop point has the point way above the center line. On the spear point, I have it almost exactly in the center line, so it's more of a thrusting type tool. And then the Wharncliffe, it's very low, and that's going to be for cutting something that's down below you. Traditionally, the Wharncliffe was used for sharpening pencils, or quills, I think. At this point, I try lots of different things. Here I'm working on the cutting edge, and it doesn't matter if it works out or doesn't. You just erase, and if you don't like these 3 designs, you make another 3. It's a lot cheaper than grinding steel into some shape that you don't like. And I'll make a straight line for the cutting edge on that knife, but you'll see I'm going to blend it in. I don't really like straight lines except just the very cutting edge. I like every other bit of the knife to have a curve, and usually a few different curves with different radiuses I think look great together. You can see I'm using lots of the different pieces from the ship's curve set. At this stage, I change my mind a lot. Changing your mind at this point is free. There's kind of a rough area there, so I'm just trying to make all the curves blend. I think line is really important. Once I get things pretty much where I want, I'll go back and erase the extra lines so I can get a pretty good look at what my options are so far. For this knife, I'm going to use the center pattern. The next step for me is going to be to ink those lines in a dark permanent ink. That'll become important in a second when we use tracing paper. I had trouble when I first started trying to get a paper pattern onto a black rough forged blade. The scale didn't like being drawn on, but I found this Bristol translucent paper, just a tracing paper, but it works great for this application. So I copy my dark inked lines from my chosen design onto the tracing paper. I'm marking my centers and the point in the end just in case I come off of the paper and have to move it back and readjust it. I check and make sure that the paper pattern does fit correctly on the rough forged blade and still looks right to my mind. Next, I get a manila envelope. I love manila envelopes for knife making. I use them for knife patterns and I use them for sheath patterns. It makes a great intermediate pattern step. If you're going to make more than one, I'll make a pattern on plexiglass or Lexan like this. There's a desk knife. If I'm going to make a lot of a knife, or if I need to take the pattern into the forge while I'm working, I'll carve the pattern out on aluminum. Sometimes I make a wood pattern. Not so much anymore. Usually it's the plexiglass or the aluminum. To get the tracing paper adhered to the manila envelope, I just use kids' rubber cement. Once I have this pattern cut out, I can use it like it is if it's just a one-use pattern. Otherwise, I go to one of my more durable pattern materials like the aluminum or the plexiglass. This was a hard part for me, finding something that drew well on the rough scale on the forged blade. What I finally settled on was these bright yellow Sharpie paint markers. They work just great, and once it dries, I can grind on this blade to get it to profile and still dip it in the water and the paint doesn't come off. So the paint holds up the pattern well enough through the whole grinding process. That's it, that's the finished blade, ready to go to the shop and be ground to profile. Thanks for watching.